And welcome aboard, everyone, here at all of my streaming stations. Charles Moscowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is my guest. Michael, how are
Hello.
you?
Hello from LA.
From LA, reporting from the City of Angels.
Yes,
Um,
hunkered down here.
is that right?
It's all these protests are confined to a few square blocks around downtown. So it's
Good, because I saw that press conference with your mayor, former Cuban radical, Karen
yes.
Bass, where she was like, we're going to try to impede the operations of ICE. And it just, what about the fires that just devastated the city? What about the fact that, the president had to call in federal agents to prevent another George Floyd Kristallnacht, another looting of black businesses, burning of black neighborhoods?
Well, she's playing to what she thinks is her constituency, which is a dwindling number of red diaper babies. Average age now is probably about 80.
Well, I guess the key question there is it a dwindling number in Los Angeles? I mean, could Los Angeles see a sea change? Or or is she right to know that this is her mindless base, that they don't care?
Well, no, I mean, she's doing what she does, I mean, let's be honest. If she weren't an ugly minority lesbian, she wouldn't have gotten to first base. So,
But is she still getting on bases? I mean, are people buying it after all these catastrophes?
well, there's, you and I've talked about in the past, there's maybe 20 to 25% of just hardcore leftists.
Right.
And the reason hardcore leftists are angry all the time is that they know their philosophy is wrong. They know it doesn't work, but they've reached a crossroads maybe decades earlier that, well, I can admit I was wrong and become a human being, or I can just cling to this because, as that line in Dickens says, I'll die with the old ways if needs must, And
But are there still enough of these demons? I mean, are their numbers dwindling? I mean, is it going to be, I mean, I've heard rumors that California could shift and is shifting or not.
well, no, that is true. I mean, for one thing, the younger generation is more conservative, but you wouldn't know that from the media coverage. But, saying that, you wouldn't know anything from media coverage.
Right. That's what I
According to
figured.
media coverage, the COVID vaccines were great, So,
All right. The same rotten media controllers that control the Boston Globe. But this also brings up the issue that I might get shut down here on TikTok. So TikTok, you TikTok Nazis are, are getting a itchy finger ready to click a shutdown button. But I think that there's evidence that California elections have been stolen for a long time. And the most recent example is the 2024 election, when you had, I think it was at least two, if not three, federal congressional district seats. They were still counting a month after the election.
yes, yes.
And eventually they were handed over to the Democrat, even though the Republican clearly had won in the beginning, and then they kept counting and counting and counting.
Yeah.
So that tells me that there's still this machine in place.
Well, I mean, you have to go
care.
by. You have to go by, and this is why this is never taught in school. But I talk about it a lot. Inductive reasoning, right? Which they try to suppress. And for the audience out there, two types of reasoning: inductive and deductive. Deductive will give you very, very small conclusions. In other words, policemen wear blue uniforms. Joe is a policeman, therefore Joe wears a blue uniform. All right, very nice. Not very useful in real life.
Right.
Inductive reasoning would be, I'm 5, 6, 7 years old. Yep. I've noticed that every morning the sun rises, and I can be pretty confident that tomorrow the sun's going to rise. Now, very importantly, you can never prove anything with inductive reasoning. I can't prove that the sun's going to rise tomorrow until it actually occurs, and then it's not a prediction anymore. So here's what I'd say. California, for many, many years, would produce Republican office holders.
Sure.
The most prominent one, maybe being Ronald Reagan.
Right.
He wasn't the only one. I mean, Earl Warren, for God's sake, was a Republican, such
Right.
as it is. So was
Even
Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was a Republican.
Yeah, okay,
right?
but all of a sudden, after Schwarzenegger left office in 2011,
Yeah.
suddenly the state turns all blue. Just magic. Someone turned a switch. No,
Right.
they figured out how to completely defraud the system.
Right. Right.
And since, to quote a book title, none dare call it treason, you just couldn't mention that.
Thank you.
And the thing that I've been on this show a couple of times and mentioned, the Bob Dornan case absolutely proved it.
Right, yeah, right. And there was a few others where also there was clearly a Republican that had won and that had been hailed as the winner. There was this young Korean woman, I think it was up in San Francisco, who was a Republican, who had won, and she was being congratulated as the first Asian congresswoman.
Yes.
And then it was like 4 weeks later, all of a sudden, we find out that she didn't win. 4 weeks later.
Right.
After recounts, and I think there was several, recounts, and then she was not seated. So there was something rotten going on there, and I think it did happen around the time of Bob Dornan, and clearly they have their hand of control over the apparatus, over what Biden himself called the greatest vote fraud machine in the history of the world.
That's right, Chuck. They had to do that because they've got smart people working for them, and they could see that if they played it straight, they'd never win. But the problem is, if you're going to cheat, you got to be very clever about how you cheat. Right. You don't, for example, in the case of the woman you just mentioned, you don't take someone that's been clearly elected and then come up with some chicanery 4 weeks later,
right?
And say, "Oh no, she lost." And by the same token, you don't take Joe Biden and decide that he had 150 million votes and carried some districts by over 100%. So it is clear that this is going on, but with the thought-controlled media, which, by the way, was an old John Birch Society term from the 60s.
I like it, yeah.
You just don't talk about certain things. And because let's face it, if the Democrats didn't have voter fraud, they wouldn't exist.
Right, but California seems to be particularly rotten. During the first Trump election in 2016, Hillary Clinton received, 2 million votes in that state, above and beyond in the Los Angeles area. And it was widely reported, even by California media, that you had these turf organizations, probably funded by either George Soros or by Communist China, the same people who are funding the riots now, that basically were out registering illegal aliens to vote. Now, I know, sorry, TikTok, I hope you don't shut me for that, but this was reported in the mainstream media, and nothing was done. Nothing, they just kept going along. So that makes me think that California, it's still under control of this rotten, corrupt apparatus, which brings me to the topic of the day. The Jeffrey Epstein files, Pam Bondi, Attorney General, Kash Patel, of all people, whom I admire, the head of the FBI, and Dan Bongino, who we all admire. I mean, former radio, as Secret Service, podcaster. Nothing going on here, they tell us. There's no files. There's no list. And that Patel and Bongino appeared together on a program hosted by Maria Bartiromo, who does a great job, by the way, as a reporter. And they made these flat statements. Oh, there's nothing happening. He committed suicide. There's no list. But people say that, and I saw a little of that they both didn't look comfortable when they said it. I mean, they looked nervous.
Well, you're exactly right. But let's put this into a little bit of context.
Okay.
Yesterday, or maybe earlier today, your friend Dershowitz came out with a video, you may have seen it, that he knows for a fact that the list exists because he's seen it as part of court proceedings.
Yeah, I mean, he was Epstein's lawyer.
Yeah.
And by the way, he would have an interest in not having that come out because he went to Epstein Island a few times.
Yeah. So here's what I think is going on and why I have some limited amount of sympathy for it.
Right.
The way the government works, and you can go back to what people refer to as the McCarthy era.
Mm-hmm.
It was the government's position officially to suppress a lot of these revelations. They came out, but what they had to do was kill the messenger. And some people think that literally that happened, by the way, because they felt, to coin a phrase, that the American public couldn't handle the truth. All right.
Right. For some reason, which is absurd. Of course, by the way, I just got a warning on TikTok. I don't know what it was that we said that triggered it, but I'm still there. But
well, you probably know. But
it could have been a number of things that come to mind. Look, I mean, what you're saying is, I think, part of the zeitgeist of this, that there's this idea, well, the American people couldn't handle the truth about what happened with the JFK assassination, with the MLK assassination,
right,
the RFK assassination, and the Epstein files, all of which were sitting on my desk, to quote Attorney General Bondi, and she was examining it. So she's already stated that she had the information on her desk. And that Patel is on the record doing interviews saying, yes, of course the FBI has that list.
Well, consider this.
Now, that was before he was the director of the FBI, but nevertheless.
Well, maybe this is some cryptic thing. Okay, I mean, what if this was exactly what they wanted to do?
Right.
That at that time, they're going to say, yeah, we got these files, we're going to release them. And then a few weeks later, no, there's no files, which is obvious BS.
Right.
And anyone who's been listening, yeah, you know what, there's files. They're not going to release the names, at least for now, because it might upset you to know that so-and-so is on the list. But I think that if you know where to look and know how to listen, it's pretty damn obvious that they're giving away the fact that there was something strange going on. And I think it's going to come out, but not right now.
Well, even today, there's no more information about the Epstein quote unquote suicide. I mean, the film was taken on a, it happened. He was on a different floor of the prison when it happened, as opposed to the one, and now the missing 1 minute on the tape that they ran, and Bondi saying, "Oh, there's nothing but child porn on this thing," which is, maybe obviously somewhat true, but there was a lot more to it than that. I mean, there was obviously something that's something hinky going on here in terms of.
Well, there's something hinky going on, but it's this weird paternalistic attitude that the government's always had. I mean,
but Trump knows better. I mean, these people know better than that. Trump himself, when he was questioned by Roger Stone about why he decided not to release the entire JFK assassination file, he said, because it's so horrible that the American people can't handle all of the truth. So he actually believes this. But the point is that, first of all, it's opened the door to rumors not releasing the Epstein stuff, that Trump was involved in it, and that, it kind of goes to some of his own peccadillos. His record is not perfect in those areas. But all I would say to that is that it's highly unlikely, because if he were, that would have been front page New York Times. Somebody would have blown. They wouldn't have gone through this whole, Steele dossier, P tapes, and Comey now, and Brenner, working with FISA to get that admitted as evidence so they could spy. They wouldn't have had to have done any of that.
Yeah.
They could have just done them in with whatever that was on the Epstein tapes. I mean, as it is, they did the thing with the the Billy Bush thing, which they thought might sink Trump, and it didn't. But if they had something really bad, it would have obviously been run up the
Of course
flag.
it would. I don't think Trump is on that list.
No, I mean, I don't either.
But again, if you look at the damage caused by the way COVID was handled, and there's no admission that we did anything wrong.
It's aggravating. It's really
it's aggravating. What's probably going to happen is at the time that you and I are long gone from this moral plane,
right.
Dribs and drabs and stuff will be coming out. But you got to admit, if you have a functioning brain now, you know that it was all screwed up, and it's very unfortunate. But you got to look at the other side of it. Many people were caught up in it and wearing the masks and doing what they had to do and getting the shots and so on. So,
yeah, but the thing is, really, I think that everything resides with this Epstein list. I think that if the Epstein list comes out, or whatever it is, all the information, it's going to blow the entire international left-wing establishment Democrat Party up away. I mean, it's going to ruin them for a generation. Because
I think so. But you, as a thinking person, would it surprise you in the least to find out that?
Of course not. You and I have known, we've been talking about this forever. I mean, but the point is, if it really comes up in a way that's more mainstream and that everyone can see it, it's going to be devastating for the whole rotten establishment. It'll be devastating for the British royal family. It'll be devastating, frankly, for Israel, probably, with the Mossad, all of it, the whole rotten mess. And that will lead to a final reckoning on COVID. Then we'll get to Anthony Fauci.
Right.
We'll get to Fauci. We'll get to Peter Daszak and the release of the virus. This whole, the Trump dossier, the Russia, all of it. Already, I mean, and this is a good thing, they're investigating Comey and Brennan. So that, I don't know exactly what they're being investigated for, but that's a positive development at least.
Yes.
But the point is that they have to get to the very belly of it, and I think it lies with Epstein. I've heard that one of the reasons why also it's not being released is because it's still being used by the establishment, who built up over decades this blackmail ability. People on that list include very prominent, powerful people, not only in government, but in business, in international position, in positions of influence. And they are being blackmailed. And without that blackmail, they'll be able to operate. Now, as far as like Bondi and Cash and Bongino are concerned, I don't think they're being blackmailed. I think they're being threatened. Now, the way Bongino and Patel looked, and this is something that Jeff Kuhner here in Boston was talking about. He's very good. I don't know how he stays on the air. He's incredible as a talk show host on WRKO. God bless him. I mean, he's amazing. But his observation is that and he has a lot of inside sources in Washington. For 10 years, he was the editor of the Washington Times, and he kind of knows a lot of what's going on. He says that they're being threatened. He says that their families are being threatened.
Yeah, for sure.
They've been told. Bondi also. Same thing with Amy Coney Barrett. We know where your kids go to school. We know who you are. Don't do it. And they're scared. They don't want to take that kind of heat, which means that maybe, I don't know, should they resign if they can't deal with it? And
Now they just find somebody else. I mean,
yeah, but who would take their place? I mean, you need somebody who would be willing to go to work every day wearing a bionic suit, and who would have no family, and who would be just constantly holding a machine gun. I mean, I don't know, either that, or I mean, Cooner says, look, they just have to stand up. He says he's been threatened in the past, and the only way to deal with it is to just immediately go out public. Yes, here it is. I've been threatened. This is what they're threatening me over, and just rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with. And here we are. And then it's over. And what can they do at that point? There's nothing
he's
else.
right, except if you know your family's being threatened, it's very hard to be 100% intellectual about it.
Right.
If it's you, and if you're paying Bondi and you've got a full plate of other stuff to do, at the end of the day, the fact that 20 scumbags are on a list of Epstein compared to the safety of her children,
right,
and the other stuff she wants to do, you put it in perspective. It's going to take a very extraordinary individual to come out and say, you know what, I'm being threatened by this person.
exactly.
And if anything happens to my kids, it was this person's fault, because that doesn't guarantee that they won't do it anyway. If your daughter is accidentally run over on her way home from school, well, you know what? It happened anyway.
Well, I guess that maybe the solution to that is to have everybody come out together, have like a gigantic press conference with, the president, the attorney general, the secretary of state, the FBI, the CIA, all of them stand up and say, this is what's going on. They're going to have to take on the entire edifice. And we're going to stand up. It's going to be very scary. We're asking the American people to join us because, if we can't do this alone. We're going to all have to, if we're going to clean this mess up and ensure the future of our country as an honest republic, we're all going to have to put aside our differences, left, right, whatever, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. We all are on the same side when it comes on to taking on this rotten, corrupt deep state. I mean, and here it is, I mean, I don't know, maybe that there's,
Well, I think if you really wanted to defeat it, what you would have to do, if you're Bondi or Patel, you come up with your own hit list, and the people that are threatening you just get killed.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, fight back. This is what, in a way, like, now that Trump they're taking on Brennan and Comey. I mean, I just listened to Brennan. I mean, he sounds nervous, but he's like, they're weaponizing the government. He's like projecting onto Trump what he was doing for all those years with the.
No, he sounded very nervous.
Yeah, but the point is that is how you do it. You meet them in the field of battle and you take them out. I mean,
well, that's right.
Like, you're going after federal employees. Really? Was he complaining when they put Steve Bannon in prison, or Peter Navarro, or any of these other people? No, this is and it has nothing to do with that. It has to do just with cleaning out this kind of rotten, politicized corruption. I mean, Comey is one of the worst. I mean, he took the FBI and he totally politicized it and turned it into his personal gendarme in a vendetta, in this bizarre vendetta against Trump. I mean, it was just, these are really rotten people. I mean, this like Hillary.
Unfortunately, that agency tends to attract people like that, and it's often people that reach high position in that agency.
Right.
I don't really know why, but
at least J. Edgar Hoover occasionally went after genuine enemies of the United States, like the mafia, or like the Ku Klux Klan, or like the Communist Party. But and I think Kash Patel is a good figure, but he's having it's not so easy. I mean, I'm sympathetic. He's taking on a agency that is so rotten and so powerful and so entrenched.
Well, it's been like that for a long time. I mean, as I mentioned last week, the entire proceedings of the so-called Watergate case, with Deep Throat being Mark Felt, who's the FBI deputy director.
Yeah.
He just had a hard-on against Nixon, and he was going to destroy Nixon any way he could. All right.
Gerald Ford was FBI. He was
Yeah.
representing them in the Warren Commission. I mean, George H.W. Bush was CIA.
Yeah.
I mean, they've kind of, it's sort of like what Michael J. Glennon talks about in his book Double Government. I mean, they've completely infiltrated, the judiciary, the executive, the legislature, the private sector. He goes point by point in terms of showing how, since 1947, when Truman signed the National Security Act, these agencies have become in control. I mean, they're basically embedded everywhere, and they've been subverting the Constitution across the board.
Well, right. I mean, the thing that really convinced me how bad the FBI is, and it's frankly irredeemable in my opinion, is if you may remember the Robert Hansen case.
He was a spy for the Soviets.
For the Soviets, but okay, so they go into this major investigation of this guy that goes on for 2 years. All right, because they're going to get this on him, they're going to get that on him, and so on, and we want to get enough to get him the death penalty. Well, of course, as people may remember, he never got the death penalty. They didn't get.
What happened to Hansen? He spent the rest of his life in prison, right?
Yeah, but they were going to get a lot more information from him, which they never did. They never went after his wife, who knew a hell of a lot more than she was saying.
Right.
So, here you have an absolute plum case where you can just rip the thing apart, try to, your whatever the contacts were with the Soviets, how many more rotten people were within the FBI. They didn't do it. They spent all this time and came up with, well, we got this guy, but you didn't find. You got the guy. You didn't get any other details. And of course, to their everlasting shame, it was the Ruskies that finally told them about Hansen, because they knew that the FBI couldn't figure it out themselves. So if you need a better explanation of how useless the FBI is, I can't think of one.
I mean, exactly, and it's become worse under Mueller, and then under Comey, and then under Chris Wray. I mean, the cover up of the infiltration of the January 6th protests by federal agents and FBI assets who were the ringleaders, people like Ray Epps, for example, he was never interviewed. 3 years later, he gets a slap on the wrist. He was the guy who invented the idea of, we got to go into the Capitol, he says.
Yeah.
Shows up the day before wearing a Trump hat. Nobody never heard of him. With his son videoing him and putting it up on YouTube. 7 different instances. We're going to go into the Capitol. Right? Who's the hell is talking about that? Then the very day of the thing, you see whispering in people's ears, go into the Capitol, and they're rushing in.
Yeah.
Obviously a ringleader, never charged. I mean, then 2 years later, the New York Times did a puff piece on him. He's being criticized by conservatives. Oh, I'm just saying the FBI became so.
I mean, there's also this tendency that the public has that if something's been around long enough, it's sacrosanct. Okay, I don't understand where that came from. You're not talking about the Catholic Church that's been around for 2,000 years. You're talking about some agency that was formed in the 1920s, and it went bad. Okay, you're not going to reform it because every aspect of it is just saturated with corruption.
Right.
And here's the thing, Chuck. Even if you were to fire every single employee, including the janitors, everybody, the culture within the building, literally.
Well, they have to do the Carthaginian approach. The building has to be leveled, and they have to then pour salt on it. Maybe put up a little plaque. Here lies the former.
Yeah, I mean, but somehow people are convinced, well, we just can't do without this organization. Well, yes, you can. And here's the other thing, folks. If the Democratic Party goes out of business because there's one corruption scandal after another, then that's okay. You know, the Whigs disappeared and the country didn't end. So nothing is going to be around forever, nor should it be. What?
No.
The biggest argument for Tony Fauci is he's been in the agency for 40 years. Oh, well, yeah. Guess he did a great job. So,
I mean, the original mission of the FBI goes back to the Palmer raids of 1920, when you had, on a single date, June 6, 1919, terrorist bombs go off in, I think it was 12 capitals around the country, almost at the same moment,
right.
attacking, federal officials, judges, even like locals. Here in Massachusetts, a bomb went off at the home of a local state senator in Newton. I mean, it was a very strange list of people, but they were all, and basically the only thing they probably had in common was they were anti-communists. And even a bomb went off at the home of Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer in Georgetown, blowing the front of his house off. He was in the house with his children and family. And his neighbor next door, who happened to be Franklin D. Roosevelt, Undersecretary of the Navy, went over and was woken up by the blast. It shook the whole area. And he went over to try to help, the family.
Right.
But it was the response on the part of Palmer was to set up an agency that would investigate this and to basically gather up all of the anarchists and terrorists who were found to be involved in it and put them on a boat and send them back to Russia. These are all, here, I don't know if they were illegal aliens. They probably were, but they were not American citizens and they were sent out.
Well, even that, though, I mean, in retrospect, why did they get off so easy?
What do you mean? Why did who give up?
They were only deported.
The thing is, it really broke the back of this edifice. And one of the people deported actually was Emma Goldman, the anarchist radical who was advocating the.
That's right.
She was very much directly involved in assassinating William McKinley. And after she was deported, then she had regrets. She said, I didn't appreciate America when I was there, and I'm sorry what I did.
Right, but I mean, as a sidebar, if you have people that are bad actors, how much of a penalty is it to you go just leave? These are people that caused a lot of harm, and there should have been some consequence for that, but there never were.
That's true. You're right. And so it's not that they were given a pass, but the last terrorist incident to occur in that whole list, and these were people who were trying to overthrow the United States. These were, seditious, communist, subversive radicals. Was the bombing on Wall Street in 1920, which was a much more serious bombing than people can imagine. I think there were 50 people killed. There were dismembered bodies found all over the whole area. The whole front of the New York Stock Exchange was blown up. But that was the last gasp. We didn't hear from them again because Wilson, who was at the time an invalid, he wasn't really operating. It was probably his wife who did everything and who is despised by the left for this, arranged for the setting up of this agency that we now call the FBI and put in a young J. Edgar Hoover as head of it. And they basically pulled the rug out from under the whole conspiracy.
Well, that's one of the ironies of American history, right?
Right.
And unfortunately for the left, Wilson was stopped. Although he did a hell of a lot of damage, let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely. One of the worst.
But he had the stroke. His wife was the shadow president, who in many ways did a better job than he did.
She was a patriot, and she actually was like, everything went through her. Nobody could even see Wilson. She kept him off like it was like the movie Psycho with the mother
Yeah.
upstairs, in a chair. He was like off. I mean, she only once after there was clamor on the part of the secretary of the speaker of the house. I must meet the president. That's what we do. That's what is tradition. She finally let them come in, but it was very controlled. He came in for like 5 minutes, and Wilson was propped up on the bed, made to look good, and he answered a few questions, and then they moved him out. But she ran everything, and she was apparently a pretty patriotic figure. She put an end to a lot of this crap.
I guess he didn't count on that. That
No.
was
he was.
yeah.
He was.
I've
He was.
always
It reminds me of Biden in a way. I mean, that I think it was Mike Johnson when he became Speaker of the House. He said, "I want to meet Biden. He's the president. I'm the Speaker. That's what you do. You meet the president. Everyone does it. It doesn't matter which party." And they wouldn't let him meet him. And finally, he went to the media, and then so they put pressure on. So they finally agreed that he could come to meet Biden. So he shows up at the Oval Office. Everyone is there. Harris is there. Blinken, the whole cabinet is there. Everything is controlled. They wouldn't even let Biden say anything. Finally, Biden himself stood up and said, "Look, I want to speak to the speaker alone. Everybody get out." So they all got out, and Mike Johnson was alone with Biden. And in the course of the conversation, he said, "Look, why did you sign an executive order stopping LNG shipments to my district in New Orleans? Yeah. This has been very bad for our economy. We spent all of this investment getting the dock built, and this is supplying cheap gas and fuel to the entire state and to the entire region. Why did you stop it?" And Biden looked at him with this blank look on his face, and he goes, "I didn't stop it. I don't know what you're talking about." And it was at that moment that Johnson realized that Biden was out of it. He didn't even know what was going on. Some auto pen had stopped it, or somebody in that office had signed something to stop it. And that was the beginning of people realizing that Biden really was not functioning in his right mind. I mean,
but in truth, even when he was much younger,
well,
he wasn't.
He was never in great shakes anyway, but he had no idea what was going on. And that was kind of Wilson's condition in the final 2 years of his presidency. He was just out of it. He was being stuffed and kept in a room just as a figurehead. How did we get on this? Oh, we were talking about the FBI after J. Edgar Hoover. It started out good, there were no more anarchist instances in this country until the 1960s, until the ADA and the Weather Underground. That's when it started to come back. But it was about 30 years of nothing like that. So somewhere along the line, the FBI, which started out good, it just went off the rails, and I think it went off the rails probably with the appointment of Bob Mueller in the 1990s. That's when things really started to become politicized.
That's probably accurate.
Yeah.
Because when I first started hearing, when I was living in the DC area, you get these stories that the morale within the agency was just rock bottom.
Right.
That was 2004.
That's what Mueller was. I think Mueller was appointed in 2003, and also Louis Freeh, I don't think was a good guy either. But things started to become politicized. It became a gendarme for the establishment and for the deep state, as it were. I mean, I noticed it when our congressman here in Boston, Stephen Lynch, who represents the part of the city of Boston where the marathon bombing took place, he went to Mueller and he said, "I want to know what you know. I want to see, apparently the FBI knew something about these people who had done that bombing. And I demand to know what you know. I'm doing a full investigation." And Mueller said, "No, we're not giving it to you. That's top secret. That's an ongoing investigation." And so Stephen Lynch, kind of a weak, a spineless, you think that he was a tough guy. He's not a bad guy. He was the head of the Steelworkers Union. He completely capitulated. But the point is that, the FBI is an agency of the government. He is elected. He is the government. He is there to represent us. If he wants information, he gets it. That's
Yeah.
why, otherwise, you have a rogue agency that is operating extra constitutionally. And the fact that Mueller said that he wouldn't release the information, he should have been put in shackles at that point and
Yeah,
thrown
well,
in
I mean,
prison until he released
a
it.
lot of the agencies hide behind this secret stuff,
Right.
and the main use, unfortunately, of secrecy is to protect them from their incompetence being revealed. And I suspect what would have happened is, yeah, you're damn right. We had a file on these two brothers,
Yeah.
and they were doing this, that, and the other, and we didn't do anything to stop it. So we're completely culpable.
Well, I don't think it was any secret that they admitted that they had been following them, so they knew
Yeah.
about them. And but the fact that they would withhold this information from a sitting congressman who represents the district, that's more than unconscionable. That's illegal. That's a federal agency that has to be under Congress. They have to give Congress whatever information they want.
But
And
there's
then,
no
of course,
consequences. I mean, that's the
yeah.
point. In
Well,
polite
that's
society only works if people cooperate. Okay? But if I say no, now in theory, you may have a mechanism to be able to get this information, but this is why sometimes violence is the answer to people's problems, because if you go through the system, yeah, if you have 100 years, it'll work. And by the way, this isn't only the government; these NGOs work this way. When I was
right, of course.
when I was the head of an ASTM committee that was involved with Chinese drywall, your viewers in Florida will be familiar with that. I came up with some methods to test for this and so on. Anyway, that wasn't what was going to be approved by the organization, despite the fact that what they were recommending didn't work. We had the data to prove it didn't work. Okay, here's the point. There was a mechanism for me to protest this decision. And the mechanism was I write up what my grievance is, and they come back and say, yes, thank you for your grievance. We heard you, and now, F you, basically.
Right.
So in a case like that, I just quit the organization. But the point is, if you have something that's going to really be important, there is no mechanism that is practical. And they know that, and that's why they operate with such impunity.
And that is when it comes to the government, they need to take a look at the U.S. Constitution, and Congress needs to understand its actual powers, which are considerable.
Yes.
And that means that they have the plenary power over these agencies, and they can abolish them at any time, or they can, if an agency of any type is not doing their bidding, then that's a rogue agency, and that actually is a crime. Now we've already talked about federal judges who are like saying, well, the government can't cut people out, their jobs as if these are lifetime appointments because it's Trump and we say so. And that's a rogue act. That's not constitutional. Where in the Constitution does it say that Planned Parenthood is supposed to get $500 billion a year? I mean, really? That which clause of the Constitution is that? But somehow they're finding this, and this is the radicals we're dealing with. I think it's getting better because I think the Supreme Court is starting to stand up.
Yeah, it's getting better because now it's being exposed a lot more than it was.
But it's going to take a generation to clean out the judiciary. I mean, you're going to have 4 years of Trump, maybe 8 years of somebody like Trump, whoever it is, and maybe even another 8 years before these people can be cleaned out.
Well, by the way, who died and decreed that being a federal judge is a lifetime appointment? I mean, what is the logic behind that exactly?
Well, I mean, the whole thing can be abolished. There's no the Constitution only establishes the Supreme Court
Yeah.
with, and that is a lifetime appointment. But that's it. The all these other courts. There's rumors that President Trump is going to abolish Washington D.C., which is great. Maybe it should be returned to Maryland and Virginia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what kind of blackmail was involved in Nixon giving home rule to D.C. anyway?
There was something very hinky going on there because they now have their own judiciary, which is the most corrupt and the most powerful. It's that judiciary that has, for example, stopped the deportation of Tren de Agua gang members, and all the rest. And if they abolish DC, then that judiciary goes away and should go away. There's no, it's almost become like a. I mean, I don't want to use the comparison of the Vatican or the city of London, which is the financial center of London, and which is almost its own sovereign country. In fact, if the royal family, the Queen or the King, they can't even visit the city of London unless they get a special passport. Yeah. It's a sovereign financial center that's located around St. Paul's Cathedral, and it controls financial transactions all over the world. Where did that come from? How did it happen that these city states, I know I'm putting on a tin hat here a little bit, so be it, that they have extra constitutional powers? It's almost like they're sovereign.
It was an idea that went back. The original reason to have the district carved out of Maryland, Virginia, was that this was going to be a special location that wouldn't have any, the residents wouldn't have any political power of their own per se.
Right.
Okay. They were going to be employed by the government. So that was a special status. Well, okay, fine. But that went to hell pretty quickly because it became a town like any other town. And not everybody in the district works for the government, by the way.
Right.
So it all went stupid. And then giving them a home rule was the absolute worst. But, this is another one of you could write a whole PhD thesis on the stupid things done by Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
And forming the EPA was one.
Sure.
Taking us off the gold standard was another. And giving home rule. And again, it was a typical thing. When the home rule first came in, they were very buttoned down, and Mayor Walter Washington, but he was joined at the hip with the federal government. But then that gradually, they loosened the bonds.
Right.
And it became the mess that it is now.
Well, in spite of what we're talking about, and I do think that this Jeffrey Epstein thing is very troubling. It's the first time I am concerned about the Trump administration. I'm critical.
I think that, you can be concerned, but the reason I think is A, they have bigger fish to fry.
Okay.
B, they're operating under, I think, the faulty assumption that people can't handle it.
Right.
And I mean, I don't agree with
exactly. Right.
But put yourself in the position of having this government mentality. All right. And if people couldn't handle the fact that there were communists in the U.S. government and in the army but certainly before that, but post World War II, that's the mentality. All right. And then there's the other example is extraterrestrials, right? Maybe it exists and maybe they don't. But what do? They go through this stupid thing in New Mexico, which I think was just a scam. Say, well, we're going to give you this, but you're probably going to figure out it's all BS. They're just stupid. They're trying to do mind control. And it doesn't work in the era of the internet anymore.
Right.
But that's the old playbook.
Yeah. It's the MK Ultra program, and
Yeah.
it's as a student of sociology, I'm more convinced than ever that the whole science of sociology was an attempt to try to control society.
Yeah.
Psychology also. I mean, that these were studies in how to control the human mind in a mass level by maybe focusing on how to control the individual. And they were doing experiments in that way. And of course, in the broad sense, this has always been the goal of governments going back to the very beginning of time. This was what paganism was all about, what idol worship was all
Yeah.
about. This is what God warned us about in the Torah. This is why you weren't to worship idols, because they were false. They were false gods. And who were they? What were they? It was a false graven image that was created by people who wanted to control a society, and they would put words in the mouth of the false god, and you'd believe it because you believed that this was God. It's a form of mind control. Back then, people were more simplistic in that they had not yet developed an ability to understand. There wasn't as much human knowledge available at the time, so you could do this. Now there are more sophisticated ways to do it, like artificial intelligence and electronic control of people's minds, which is a big, big subject. But that's what it comes down to. It's like this idea that the human being needs to be controlled, and that we
Yeah.
cannot be sovereign citizens under God, thinking for ourselves. And somehow we need to. It's like they treat you like we're children, and that the government is a patrol, like the patrician, I guess is the Latin word. The word patrick comes from that, the father, the it's a word that pops up in every language, that it's the father figure that would control the lesser people because they don't know how to function on their own.
Right.
It's the oldest conspiracy in the book. I mean, this idea that we don't, because we do. Even the most simple person does. We're all capable of sovereignty, individual sovereignty. And if we don't exercise it well, then we suffer the consequences personally. But if we do exercise it well, we can excel. And the fact is that the whole purpose of our government with its system of checks and balances is so that we can preserve that sovereignty. And it's gone off the rails with this elite, the same people that are telling Bondi and Patel that they can't release this information. We want to know the information. We can handle the truth. I mean, this is absurd. Let's have it out, all of it, all of it.
Well, I mean, as mentioned, it is really absurd in the internet era, where information comes out. People can think it's not Walter Cronkite by himself anymore. So people are able to think, but the models that are being used to govern us still go back to the pre-internet age, right?
It goes back to the beginning of time, and now it's more sophisticated because of electronics. And I want to know the truth about all of this business around Epstein and the blackmail. And you have anti-Semites say, "Oh, the Israelis are behind it." Fine, I don't care if they're behind it. If they're behind it, I want to know that. Let it all come out. It'll clean their mess up.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a deep state that goes back. The Mossad was established right around the same time as the CIA and the FBI, or the CIA. The FBI was older, but let's clean that up. I mean, I get the fact that they're doing unsavory things to preserve Israel's position, and I understand that. But they can withstand a little disclosure. I mean, they all can. I mean, it's sort of like I think it was actually Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis who said that the best disinfectant for corruption is exposure, is the truth. And that's what we need. Anyway, but having said that, I still feel that the overall trend is good.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. If the only thing you have to worry about is Jeffrey Epstein, then
there are bigger fish to fry. Trump said it himself, And I don't think he said it eloquently, and he often doesn't, but that I get it. I mean, there are bigger things going on in the world right now. It's, we can maybe get at this deep state indirectly. I'm disappointed that they're not releasing it. We need to keep the pressure on, but, there are other things going on.
Yeah, it would be great if everything could be straightforward and wasn't politicized. But then remember, you got millions of people involved in this gigantic, labyrinth of government. And
Right.
anytime you have people involved, stuff could go wrong, right?
And that to take on this deep state, it's not going to happen overnight,
Yeah.
but you can make progress, and progress is being made. I do think that now, as I've said, the Supreme Court is stepping up and allowing things to proceed in terms of.
You're exactly right. And I think the reason they're stepping up is even a guy like Roberts realizes that the prestige of the courts is at an all-time low, and he has to do something to raise the standard a little bit. And I'm not surprised if on this latest thing where Ketanji Jackson Brown was the only one that voted against it. Some of this has got to be orchestrated too.
She was even called out by Sotomayor, called her out.
Yeah. Well, that was it.
Do you even know what this case is about? I mean, she's like writing a decision as if it had nothing to do. It didn't connect. It was all about something else. So, yes, I mean, those are good signs.
Yeah, but Chuck, what did you expect if some woman comes before the Senate and can't answer a question, what is a woman?
No, I mean, obviously.
He was on the highest court in the land.
Yeah, this is obviously a DEI. And Biden, the one thing that he said with some clarity, and there were very few things that he did say, was just that. We're going to have a black woman as vice president and on the Supreme Court. So, yeah, DEI. She was picked for that reason.
Well, I mean, but it was beyond DEI, because there's nothing in DEI that says you have to pick a stupid black woman.
I know there were plenty of good ones out there. They could have picked Carol Swain, for example, the author of the 1776 Project, brilliant black woman.
Well, there were actually a number of names that were floated at the time.
Yeah.
And they come up with her, and you're thinking this has got to be a joke, right? But
they want to do what they're doing now with the courts. They wanted to have people in place who would, preserve their position and subvert the Constitution. So anyway, Mike, what do you have coming up on the Substack?
Well, I was thinking of looking at just how rotten everything that the left does is, and how people get locked into this as a lifestyle. Because, never mind the fact that Soros or the Chicons are paying for this stuff. Where do these true believers still come from? I mean, you mentioned you have a few in your family,
right?
But what, frankly, in the hell is wrong with these people? It's like the Flat Earth Society.
Yeah, there is definitely something wrong. And by the way, I'm following several really good independent journalists. One of them is named Nate Friedman. I don't know if you follow these guys. He goes out with his camera.
Not actually, but I have read his stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he goes out with his camera to these different protests, the Pussy Hat rallies and the King's rallies, and he just interviews people and takes pictures and takes videos. And he has shown through his YouTube channel, or I think he does it on Rumble because maybe YouTube doesn't allow it, that it's the same person at multiple locations, right, and that they are connected to an organization that is financed by this guy who is getting financing from communist China. What's his name? Tingman or something. And also Soros and other people, and the Tides Foundation. The Tides Foundation is something that it's actually in Los Angeles. I was talking about this years ago with Patrick O'Heffernan. It's this massive fund where multi-billionaires and millionaires that are on the left can put money in without being held accountable, because their fingerprints are off of it once they put it in. And then the Tide Foundation takes this huge money laundering slush fund. I'm not saying they're doing anything illegal, but it's certainly unethical. And they can then distribute it to whoever they want, including these street organizations who do these protests.
Yeah.
And it shows that they are financing these protests because it's the same people. You can see them. I mean, it's obvious. There's pictures of them. They're recognizable. And, they call one of them the babushka lady. She shows up in about 5 different cities. She has the same people with her. They're into the Intifada thing. I mean, whatever the cause is. And they have these apps which organize it. You get a little alert on your app. Be at Dealey Plaza at 12 o'clock on Tuesday.
Yeah, Dealey Plaza.
I don't know why. Why did I pick that? I'm just saying that be here and be there at this time, or be square. And they're paid, and so they're able to create these rent-a mobs or these fake events. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious that this is what's going on. And I hope that these independent journalists are able to get up on media a little bit more and expose this for what it is, and that people are going to realize that this whole thing is fake.
Well, that was, by the way, that was always suspected back in the 60s.
Oh, yeah, sure. The outside agitators.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's nothing new, but it's, in a sense, it's taking the electronic element and using it to advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
And showing what this is about.
The babushka lady. Why did you interview her?
I know. She's there with the keffiyeh wrapped about 10 times over her head. Anyways, so Mike, right. as always, thanks for joining me.
Well, always a pleasure. And
God bless America. Thank you.
We will do this again next week.
You bet. Thanks a lot.
All righty.
All right. Take care. Thank you.